Sonoran Desert's silent watcher in the sweltering summer of 2013, Rachel Montoya, a wildlife biologist hardened by years in the field, ventured alone into the formidable expanse of the Sonoran Desert. Her objective, a focused 2-week study on the elusive nocturnal raptors, a project demanding deep solitude and unwavering observation. Tucson, her familiar anchor, receded into memory as her rugged four devoured the miles of dusty, unpaved track. Rachel was no stranger to the desert's inherent perils: the scorching sun, the venomous inhabitants, the constant battle against dehydration. Yet the danger that awaited her this time was an anomaly, an unnamed, unclassifiable threat that lay beyond the realm of scientific understanding. She meticulously chose her camp, a secluded dry arroyo, its sandy banks flanked by the resilient creosote and the gnarled, shadowy mesquite, offering a deceptive pocket of shelter. 40 miles separated her from the nearest paved road, a deliberate choice for pristine data, but also a stark reminder of her profound isolation. Her sole lifelines to the outside were a satellite beacon for dire emergencies and a crackling old shortwave radio for sporadic weather updates, both feeling woefully insufficient against the vast, oppressive silence. By the third night, a subtle disquiet began to gnaw at her meticulously ordered mind. It started small, almost imperceptible. Her field journal, which she was certain she'd left tucked securely beneath her cot, was discovered lying outside the tent flap, its pages ruffled by a phantom breeze. Her primary backpack, zipped tight when she drifted off, now gaped open, its contents undisturbed but undeniably exposed. She initially brushed it off, attributing the oddities to her own exhaustion, the mental haze that often accompanied long, intense days in the field. "Just tired, Rachel," she'd muttered to herself, shaking her head. Overthinking things. Then came the footprints. They appeared the following morning, just outside her tent, bare, unmistakably large, far larger than any human foot she knew, and deep imprinted with a weight that suggested something substantial had passed. They didn't lead anywhere. Instead, they circled her tent in a meticulous, almost deliberate pattern, like a predator patiently assessing its prey. A cold dread, sharp and sudden, pierced through her complacency. These were not hers. She knew the desert's inhabitants, its coyotes, its bobcats, its occasional mountain lions. None left a print like this. The air suddenly felt heavy, charged with an unseen presence. The unsettling discovery stole her sleep the next night. Every rustle of dry leaves, every distant hoot of an owl was amplified, distorted into a potential threat. Around 2:00 a.m., the profound silence of the desert was broken by a sound that defied categorization. A dragging sound outside. It wasn't the rhythmic crunch of footsteps, nor the familiar whisper of the wind sifting through the mesquite. It was a slow, heavy scrape, like something immense being pulled across the coarse sand, a sound that seemed to absorb all other ambient noise. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic drum against the vast quiet. Slowly, with a mix of terror and scientific compulsion, she unzipped the tent flap, peering into the inky blackness. There was nothing. The desert stretched seemingly empty under the countless stars. But then her flashlight beam caught it in the fine dust just a few feet from her tent, another fresh footprint. Just one, perfect and terrifyingly present. The realization that whatever had made the sound, whatever had left that single, impossible print, had been there, right there, sent a shiver down her spine that had nothing to do with the desert's cool night air. It felt intelligent, deliberate, a warning. The incident spurred her to check her wildlife cameras, crucial for her study, and positioned strategically around her camp. One she discovered with a growing sense of alarm had powered off completely, its screen blank. The other, despite having brand new batteries inserted just the day before, was entirely drained, its power lights stubbornly dark. It was more than a malfunction. It felt deliberate, an intelligent act of sabotage. The chill in her gut deepened into an icy certainty. She was not alone, and whatever was out there, it was not only aware of her, but actively interfering. The seventh night arrived, heavy with an oppressive stillness. The air itself felt thick with anticipation pressing down on her. Rachel, despite her growing apprehension, still had data to collect. A sensor critical to her raptor study was positioned less than 300 yards from her camp. She decided to make a quick trip, flashlight in hand, keeping her senses on high alert. The walk felt infinitely longer, every shadow a potential lurking presence. When she returned less than an hour later, the world tilted on its axis. Her entire camp was gone. Not just ransacked, not just disturbed, vanished. Everything. Her sturdy expedition tent, a beacon of safety in the vast emptiness, her array of sophisticated scientific equipment, painstakingly organized, her cooler packed with provisions, her sleeping bag a comfort in the cold desert nights. All of it gone without a trace. The spot where her camp had been moments before was now bare sand, as if it had never existed. In the place where her tent had stood, where her world had been, was a perfect spiral pressed into the sand. Not etched, not drawn, but pressed, as if an enormous, perfectly formed weight had settled there. There were no tracks leading to or from it, no disturbed sand from wind or animal. Just the impeccable, unnerving spiral, a symbol of alien geometry in the heart of the wilderness. The sight, so utterly impossible, was the final breaking point. Logic, reason, all the tenets of her scientific training crumbled into dust. She hit her emergency beacon without a second thought, the small device her last tangible link to survival. Then, fueled by a primal terror that eclipsed exhaustion and thirst, she began to hike. 11 miles through the oppressive silent night, her mind a whirlwind of impossible images, the monstrous footprints, the single taunting print, the dead cameras, the vanished camp, the perfect, impossible spiral. Every step was a battle against the overwhelming dread. When she finally stumbled back into civilization with the search teams, the sun already high and merciless, she directed them to the location. But the desert, with its endless secrets, offered no solace. The spiral was gone. The sand was pristine, undisturbed. No prints, no sign of her valuable gear. Just an endless expanse of desert mocking her harrowing ordeal with its indifferent stillness. Rachel Montoya left the field entirely. The desert, once her passion, became the source of an enduring nightmare. To this day, she dreams of something watching her, a nameless presence lurking just beyond the edge of perception, waiting in the shifting sands. "I was warned," she whispers to those brave enough to listen, her voice hollow with a fear that time is not dull. And the unspoken dread hangs in the air. Next time, it might not let me leave. In the spring of 2001, British geologist Mark Sullivan, a man whose life revolved around the solid, predictable certainties of the Earth, joined a high-profile research expedition into the Rub al Khali, the empty quarter. It was a place of legend, a vast, unbroken ocean of sand in the Arabian Peninsula, famously the largest contiguous sand desert in the world. Its very name, the empty quarter, spoke volumes. Endless red dunes stretching to an indifferent horizon, utterly devoid of human habitation, of roads, of anything but the raw elements. It was a place where sound seemed to dissipate, where even echoes refused to return. The team, comprised of seasoned geologists and a local Omani guide, meticulously set up their camp near a striking jagged rock formation that jutted abruptly from the undulating dunes. Its dark angular contours stood in stark contrast to the soft flowing sand. Their Omani guide, a weathered man named Farid, whose eyes held the wisdom of generations who had traversed these ancient lands, referred to it with a hushed reverence. He called it the Jinn's Cradle. Farid's eyes, usually filled with a quiet dignity, now held a rare, urgent plea as he begged them, almost whispered, not to sleep there. He spoke of ancient spirits, of unseen inhabitants of the desert that claimed such places as their own, places where the veil between worlds thinned. The geologists, men of science and reason, exchanged knowing glances. They were in the 21st century, armed with satellite phones and GPS. They laughed, a polite dismissive chuckle, but a laugh nonetheless. They believed in empirical data, not desert superstitions. Farid, his face etched with unheeded concern, simply shook his head, retreating to set up his own solitary bedroll, a considerable distance away from the ominous formation, a silent testament to his profound unease. That night, the desert air, usually crisp and cool, felt strangely heavy, almost oppressive. Around midnight, Mark Sullivan, a famously deep sleeper, jolted awake. It wasn't a sound that had roused him, not exactly. It was more like a vibration, a deep-seated pressure in the air, a low-frequency hum that resonated not in his ears, but in his very bones. It was subtle at first, then intensified, a low, ominous thrum that made the hairs on his arms stand on end, a prickling sensation that crawled across his skin. And then came the scream. It rose from the very heart of the jagged rocks. Not a human cry, but something utterly alien and terrifying. High-pitched metallic, it tore through the stillness of the night like razor-sharp shrapnel. It was the sound of metal tearing, but not in the open air. It was as if this immense metallic shriek was happening underwater, muffled and distorted, yet undeniably powerful. It seemed to defy the laws of acoustics. It echoed without direction, bouncing off dunes that hadn't shifted in centuries, reverberating back and forth, making it impossible to pinpoint its source. It was everywhere and nowhere simultaneously, a sound designed to shatter sanity. Every member of the camp was jolted awake. Tents rustled as panicked figures emerged, flashlights cutting desperate arcs through the darkness. The air was thick with unspoken terror, the lingering metallic tang of the scream clinging to the night. People called out names, their voices strained with a mixture of fear and confusion, and then Farid was gone. No struggle, no sound of a fight, no cry for help, just gone. The spot where his bedroll had been lay empty, undisturbed, as if he had simply vanished into thin air. It was as if he had simply dematerialized, swallowed by the profound silence that had abruptly returned after the horrific scream. Panic, cold and raw, seized the team. They scoured the immediate vicinity, their headlamps frantic beams against the vast, indifferent desert, illuminating nothing but sand and shadow. They found his boots, placed side by side neatly, disturbingly near the base of the jinn's cradle. They looked as if he had simply stepped out of them, a silent macabre gesture, and directly above them, burned into the solid, unyielding stone of the rock formation, was a charred mark, a perfect circle, almost branded into the rock face, unnervingly precise. Mark reached out, his hand trembling, and felt the heat radiating from it. It was still warm, the stone hot beneath his fingertips, a searing contradiction to the cool desert night. The impossible heat on the ancient stone, the unnerving perfection of the circle, spoke of something beyond human comprehension or natural phenomena. No one spoke. First, the headlights, which had been cutting steady beams across the dark, started to flicker, as if struggling against an invisible drain, dimming and brightening erratically. Then the radio, which had been playing a classic rock station softly, suddenly dissolved into a chaotic blast of static, a harsh grating sound that filled the small cab, overriding any attempt at conversation. A wave of intense nausea suddenly swept over Dave, one of Tom's friends. He clutched his stomach, his face going pale, and began to vomit violently out the open door of the truck, the retching sounds disturbingly loud in the sudden silence. The woman stopped. She was now disturbingly close, perhaps 30 feet away. The flickering headlights cast an intermittent glow on her, revealing her chilling visage. Her face, it was wrong, terribly, fundamentally wrong. There were no features, no eyes to meet their terrified gaze, no nose to cast a shadow, no mouth to speak. Just blank, smooth skin, an unbroken canvas of pallor, like a doll's face that had been sanded down. It was a face that should not exist, a void where expression and humanity should be, and the sheer emptiness of it was more terrifying than any monstrous feature. And then her mouth opened. But it wasn't a mouth, it was a void, a perfectly circular, impossibly deep hole that seemed to absorb the light, to pull the very sound from the world around them, creating a localized pocket of unnerving quiet. All ambient noise vanished, replaced by an oppressive silence that pressed in on their ears, thick and heavy. From this terrifying, featureless aperture, a low-frequency hum emanated. It wasn't a sound they heard with their ears alone. It resonated through their very bodies, vibrating in their bones, a sensation so intense and sickening that it felt as if their skeletons were on the verge of splitting apart. It was a sound that attacked the very core of their being, dissolving their very sense of self. Tom Red remembered nothing after that. The world went black, consumed by the bone-shattering hum. Mike and Dave's panicked cries were swallowed by the void. They woke at dawn, groggy, disoriented, and covered in a fine layer of dust. The sun was already a fierce presence in the sky, burning away the night's horrors. Their truck, however, was nowhere in sight. They were miles away from where they had parked, disoriented and vulnerable in the vast desert. There were no footprints around them, no disturbed sand to indicate how they had moved. It was as if they had simply been placed there by an unseen hand. A chilling detail. Their watches, all three of them, had inexplicably stopped at 2:34 a.m., precisely 4 minutes after the woman had opened her horrifying mouth, a precise, unnerving timestamp of their missing time. The truck was later found by a desert patrol, abandoned far from any discernible road. Its lights were a mangled, unrecognizable mess. The plastic and wiring melted from the inside, as if an immense internal heat had caused the destruction, leaving a lingering smell of burnt ozone. Tom was discharged from the Air Force not long after. The official reason was hallucinations and night sweats, symptoms consistent with severe psychological trauma. But Tom knew the truth. He could still hear the hum, a phantom resonance that vibrated in the deep recesses of his mind. It was subtle, almost imperceptible most of the time, a background noise that only he could perceive, but it would intensify, becoming a palpable presence, especially near power stations, he noticed, where electromagnetic fields might somehow resonate with whatever unknown energy had enveloped them. And most terrifyingly, especially when he was alone, the hum would return, a chilling reminder of the faceless horror in the Mojave. He told his story once to a sympathetic therapist who dutifully recorded his delusions. He tried to articulate the impossible, the unfathomable, the way the hum had made his very bones feel as if they were splitting, how the blank face had stolen his peace. After that single attempt, however, he never spoke of it again. The experience was too profound, too terrifying, too deeply personal to share with a world that wouldn't believe. He carried the hum and the memory of that blank, terrible face alone, a silent testament to the unspeakable things that lurk in the empty spaces of the world, waiting for their moment to appear.